So Mad Max, all right, no, I don't think I can make a character with Crazy Hunter from Norway. That's a very specific trait. And actually, we can't associate traits with cultural backgrounds. So we can't actually say this trait only belongs to people from Norway. Like those two parts of the game do not talk to each other intentionally because we wanted to give the impression that, like within the systems of our game, there is no like racial or ethnic background you can have that limits your options in terms of what your character is capable of. We just didn't want to do that in the game. There are definitely, but the thing is, like, there are definitely experiences that people have because of their ethnic background that that if you wanted to represent that on a character, you can do a better job of telling the story of a certain character by bearing their cultural background in mind. And so, like, for instance, one of the things I really appreciated when I think it was Proxicus, it was you that recommended that I play Watch Dogs 2, right? And one thing that I really appreciated about the characters in Watch Dogs 2 was their like racial and ethnic background really played into like they would code switch with each other and they would relate to each other with shared experiences in different ways, and you could really see like they did not just sort of arbitrarily superficially give characters different races. They like actually like it was a huge part of who the character was, and you don't see that a lot in video games because oftentimes people will make someone's personal their outward appearance very cosmetic in a game. But in State of Decay 2, because our characters were procedurally generated, we didn't think we were going to be capable of doing a good job of representing someone's cultural background or their ethnic background in their traits. That there would be a lot of like that if we tried, because of the randomly generated nature of the characters, we would have enough bad mismatches and enough bad implications and things that didn't work, that it was actually going to cause more problems than it solved. Like maybe for every one, ooh, that character was like really like interestingly appropriate to my background. For all of those good experiences we were going to create, there were going to be at least two bad experiences that were going to come out of it. And so we decided not to do it. Instead, we decided to basically try to eliminate any trait that would seem specifically appropriate to one or specifically inappropriate to one particular cultural background. Tried to shave all of those off and just had the two very independently, and try to instead lean into the idea that everyone can be anything. And we made that the statement of the game rather than trying to do deep representation of characters, just because it was just so much risk of us doing it badly. And so like avoiding, like, first do no harm was kind of our approach. Avoid doing it badly first and then see where you can do it well. So like, for instance, in the naming system, I tried to really put a lot of research and get a lot of input from people from different like ethnic backgrounds as I was developing the naming system, because I wanted that to feel deeply representative of the people that we were trying to depict in the game. And so you'll see like there's like very different nicknaming schemes coming from different cultures and stuff like that. We wanted, that was a place where I really could do it and put the work into making it fit. But with traits, it just felt like we were not going to do a good job. And so we decided not to do the thing where there was a lot of risk of us doing a bad job. But, that was because we took a very specific approach with State of Decay 2, where literally every character that you could play was procedurally generated. State of Decay 1 was not that way. And, there's no, specific reason why every game in State of Decay has to be that way in the future. And so I would love it if, at some point in the future, we do create more curated characters that we put more time into really trying to get them right. And if we do that in the future, then yeah, I think that representing different cultures and stuff should be brought in, and we should try to do a good job of that. So it's just, it's walking a fine line. We just really want people to feel at home in our game. And we don't want to do a bunch of sort of ham-fisted, blundering around stuff that makes a segment of our audience feel like, oh, these people don't get me. These people are like, they're trying, but, they're garbage. They don't understand. Like, we don't want to create that, because that moment really can kick people out of games. And we're trying to avoid it. Can't promise we did it successfully, but we tried, and I hope that was okay. So Paroxicus, actually, you're right. Paroxicus points out that in Heartland, we did have a bunch of playable characters that were attempting to be, more representative of particular cultures that they came from and stuff like that. And Paroxicus particularly appreciates the relationship between Aunt Fee and her niece, whose name is not coming to mind right now. Larice, I think. Anyway, yes. Oh, you said Larice right there. Yeah. Aunt Fee and Larice. So Thank you. I'm glad that worked because we Andy really put a lot of work into trying to bring in writers from a bunch of different backgrounds specifically to write the voices of these characters and to help, because there's just a lot of things he was never going to get right on his own. And so he brought in a lot of people to try to write some of these voices and how people talk to each other, or to consult with him on the story so that we could try to get the stuff right. Because there's just always limits to how well you can do. People are really good at writing. Like, I would be really good at writing a character who was raised Mormon, and like was born in Utah but raised in the South. Like, I could do that because, and then who moved to the West Coast as an adult. I could do that really, really well because that's me. But that doesn't, every step I take away from that is gonna have some problems. Like, I think, what was I watching recently? Oh yeah, so I was watching Tokyo Vice, for instance. It's a really, really good show on HBO that I really enjoy. And one of the things I really loved about it was seeing this. It's this window into Japanese culture. It's from the point of view of a Midwestern American who has moved to Tokyo because he really loves Japanese culture and he really wants to be a part of what's going on in Japan, but he has a lot of trouble fitting in there. People just make assumptions about him as a gaijin, and they don't want to give him access to a lot of authority and opportunity. And and meanwhile, he's also trying to figure out the Yakuza, and like, he wants to do a big expose on the Yakuza, but he can't because no one will let him in. And it's really interesting and fascinating. And I love the exposure to Japanese culture, except it's not made by Japanese people. And so I don't actually know how good it actually is. And the thing that made me realize that I don't know how good it is, because at first I was like, wow, interesting view into Japanese culture. But then they revealed that one character is a former Mormon. And they actually did a better job with her than I usually see. Usually when somebody is, a character is Mormon, they're just a disaster. And like, nothing about them, nothing about the way they talk, nothing about the way they act or react to things, nothing about the way they describe their own culture. Like, oh man, the most recent season of Fargo had a Mormon character played by Timothy Oliphant that was one of the worst depictions of a Mormon I have ever seen. It was just so false, so blatantly false. Tokyo Vice did a much better job. Their character feels much more like they've got a Mormon background than I would have expected. But there's just little tiny touches that are just a little bit wrong. It's like, she portrays herself like she's from just a normal Mormon background. But in her family pictures, they don't look like normal Mormons. They look like absolute diehard fundamentalists, like people who would be weird in Idaho. And so I'm like, okay, so somebody just looked at a lot of different sources of Mormons and didn't get the vibe of like what one particular type of Mormon was. And it just didn't quite nail it, And so I'm like, okay, so I'm seeing all these details about the thing I know about. So obviously there's probably a bunch of details wrong about the thing I don't know anything about, which is Japanese culture. I bet there's a bunch of stuff wrong in that show about Japanese culture, but I don't know because I'm not Japanese. And so I think it's all great and brilliant, but I don't know. I mean, like, the Mormon, they got, again, one of the better depictions of a Mormon I've seen. Really good, but still not perfect. And so I'm sure there's a bunch of annoying stuff in there about Japanese culture too.